Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there trying to find us, you can find this podcast on anywhere you listen to podcasts. Okay? I know everyone's growing themselves right now. I know everyone is struggling right now in the restaurants. I hear you guys. I will promise I'll start bringing on specialists again in those areas. I appreciate all of you guys reaching out, but I do know that with food costs getting higher and inflation getting higher and our dollars going less far, for lack of a better term, not as far, people are spending less in restaurants and those type of businesses in the DoorDash world. I wouldn't say maybe in cities like Denver and Nashville, they're seeing a slowdown, or maybe Miami or Los Angeles, but I do know that there are slowdowns in other parts of the world. So I will be addressing that on the show with specialists and ideas and things and AI, artificial intelligence for your restaurants that are simple solutions to help raise your dollar values and get in more repeat customers. That information is available now. So thank you guys for listening in. I appreciate all of you. With that being said, I have Eugene Kang from Los Angeles, California of Archer Jerky with us. How are you doing, Eugene?
Hey, Justin.
Wow,
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I almost tongue twisted myself there. Let's talk about beef jerky. Let's talk about Archer. Let's talk about you. It's your show. Let's go all the way back to little Eugene, your roots, and sort of talk about the beginning here, because you didn't build a small brand, right? And in the brand space you built in, as you and I just discussed in pre-recording, it's a pretty competitive space, right? The snack space, The beef jerky space, any shelf space in a grocery store or big box store for that matter. So let's talk about the roots of Eugene, because I think they're important, because I like seeing the buildup of the entrepreneur as they became who they are now. So it's all yours.
Yeah. We'll start with kind of, I guess this when we started the business, started in 2010. My partner and I were actually on a road trip up to the Grand Canyon here in Southern California. And we stopped at one of these small little roadside stands that had like a billboard on the side of the freeway that said fresh natural beef jerky and, fresh nuts and trail mixes and things like that. And we thought, okay, let's stop by and let's try. I mean, as most people do when you're on a road trip, the first thing you're thinking about is stopping at a gas station or a roadside stand and picking up some road trip snacks. So stopped in a small little shack. They had all just different types of varieties of meat snacks and nuts. I almost think it was like a little Buc-ee's. And so we tried the product, fell in love with it. It was in like a, plastic bag with a sticker label slapped on it. They had all these different types of varieties. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was way better than the commercially driven product that you see in, big box or gas stations at that time. And so, I asked the owners of the small little retail store, like, hey, who's making this product for you? Just be curious. And they pointed me to this gentleman, this gentleman who lived in Riverside, California, kind of in the Inland Empire, which is about an hour east of LA. He was a butcher by trade. He had a meat market that he owned in Orange County for 30 plus years. And started making jerky, fresh natural beef jerky on the side, and kind of was enough for him to warrant building that business. And his business model was simple: I'm just going to predominantly produce it for private label. So if you wanted to call it Justin's Fresh Jerky, he would have a minimum order quantity of like 100 bags. He had like 10 hourly folks that would work with him, and they had large jelly slicers. They would slice every top round and marinate it, and then cook and pack. And that was his business model. So love the product, love just kind of the heritage and craft approach that they were making to jerky. And so asked the gentleman, like, hey, what's your succession plan? What are you looking to do? He's 80 years old. He's like, look, I don't have one. I've just been doing this business now for 30 years, and would love to just kind of find a successor. And so my partner, I thought, hey, like, let's go disrupt the meat snack category, right? Easier said than done. Bought the business from him in 2011, got a bank loan. I think the business was doing about $500,000 in sales a year. Very small business, doing predominantly, again, like all private label for mom and pop retailers. Took it over 2011, and then kind of fast forward, 3 years later, kind of officially launched the brand Country Archer. At the time, it was Country Archer. That was the name on the building. That was his brand. But again, he was so focused on private labeling it that he never really went out and pushed his own brand. So launched the brand officially in market in 2014. Got our first big break with a couple of big box retailers that year, Sprouts being one of them and Kroger being the other. And honestly, just it kind of snowballed from there, right? We're able to get more placements in retail doors. And then the company had kind of scaled. We went from that small 2,000 square feet USDA kitchen that he had to eventually, 14,000 and another 16,000. And, fast forward, we're in a 72,000 square feet facility today that makes all of our jerky products in-house. And around 2018 is when we actually launched an adjacent product that's in the category. We launched premium better for you meat sticks, specifically beef and turkey. It was really unique and interesting at the time because the category, it was kind of split. It was half jerky, half sticks, and Slim Jim was really the only notable large scale stick producer. And then we thought, listen, the first ingredient is mechanically separated chicken, and a Slim Jim doesn't sound all that healthy. So we launched the first 100% grass-fed zero sugar stick, did incredibly well, and then just kept riding the consumer momentum on that front. And then, fast forward today, we're in over 25,000 doors nationwide. We're actually opening our second facility here in Vernon, California. It's kind of the meat mecca of Southern California. A lot of processing plants are here, and we're taking over the former Farmer John's facility and going to be producing a lot of our meat sticks now in-house. So
let's talk a little bit about this. Were you in food before 2010? Were you in?
No, I was not. No.
Okay, what was your background before 2010?
Yeah, my background was not. I mean, honestly, I was a college student.
Yeah, I want to anchor this a little bit. Let's talk about this a little bit.
I was a college student. My parents are immigrants from South Korea. They owned a bunch of gas stations, liquor stores and gas stations since I was a kid. I'll be honest, I love jerky since I was a kid. The moment I can remember, it was the best snack at my parents' gas station. I've always loved it. So I don't have a food background, but the reason why I took that leap to go into the jerky business was because growing up working at my parents' gas station liquor stores, like I loved eating jerky. And when I tell you that I stopped at that roadside stand on my road trip and tried that product, I thought like, man, we should be selling this product at my parents' gas station. It's so good. And look, it's just a few stores, but it was just that memorable for me. And so no food experience, but definitely had the entrepreneurial bug from my folks who didn't quite scale a business to where Archer is today, but man, they were true American dream story about coming here, owning a few liquor stores and kind of putting a few kids through college, et cetera. So.
Well, as someone who's similarly been compounded, I'm the third entrepreneurial legacy. My grandfather came here, cabinet store, lumber yard, accounting shop, gas station, businesses all are related if everyone really does the math as an entrepreneur, how they benefit each other. And then my father sort of avoided the entrepreneur path and then became one anyway. And then I'm the third generation of that as well. So it is a compounding legacy. And in your case, I would say the knowledge of the gas station, and I'm not sure, but obviously it sold convenience products if you're eating beef jerky. So there is a knowledge there that's being passed down in terms of that. Convenience stores, grocery stores, that sort of the companies come in and sort of pack the shelves type business, for lack of a better term, because it is a different type, what I would call a consumer stocking business. I'm not a consumer, a vendor stocking business where you guys are going in or you're having someone go in and stock the shelves for you, or maybe it's through Frito-Lay's or Pepsi. They stop by, they put all the sodas in there. Those are a little bit different. Only reason I know a little bit about convenience stores because I did a lot of fried chicken establishments in convenience stores, actually. The grab and goes that you see everywhere. So I want to talk about this a little bit more, your parents, that influence I'll call the American dream, the compounding of entrepreneurism. We come here, our parents came here, grandparents not being able to maybe speak the language or find a way. the way to not work for someone else and be limited by income is to make a living on your own and live the American dream, which is there's potentially no cap. How small it is, it's still better than it could be, because on the entrepreneurial life potentially gave more freedom to raise a family, to build businesses, to pass on the legacy, to compound things that we're talking about. I just want to anchor that for the audience. We're talking about letting our children into our businesses and everyone's afraid and we don't want to do that. What does it really potentially mean? So, Eugene, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the compounding for you, what that meant for you experiencing business at a young age, because not everyone gets that experience.
Yeah, look, here's what I'd say. I mean, you're 100% spot on. My parents were immigrants. My dad came here like 17, didn't speak a lick of English. Super smart dude. Frankly, scored a perfect score on his SATs in math, but as you can imagine, quite bombed the English side. So, for him, it was like he owned a gas station when he was like 17 years old. Like that was like the first thing he did when he got to the States, because like that's the only thing he can just know how to do and make money and to make a living. And I think growing up, look, it's no shame. They worked their asses off. Like they owned a store, and the best time was for them was like, we didn't have traditional Thanksgivings growing up, because Thanksgiving was a time where most big box retailers were actually closed, and that was like the time for them to actually be open in their neighborhood and like make a lot more sales in that day, because people needed like their quick eggs or quick milk that day. And so growing up, like it was just like embedded in me that like, what is profit and what is gross profit and how do you make a buck? I remember always asking my dad, like, hey, can you buy me this new toy? And he'd always like remind me like how many packs of cigarettes he has to actually sell to buy me that toy, because just selling a cigarette doesn't actually like generate that much money. Like, and it's like embedded in my, like, just as a childhood. I don't know if that's good or not, but like that's just what it was. And like I'll also tell you, like, I don't think any parent that has immigrated here that is worked their butts off in a kind of, business setting like that actually wants their kids to do a business. Ironically, the immigrant story is like, they don't want their kids to do that. They feel like they came here, they're busting their butts running these like bodegas or gas stations, liquor stores, and they want their kids to go out and go to college and get a white collar job, right? That's kind of the dream. And
100%.
So you can imagine my dad's kind of, I don't want to say shocked. It was more like, damn, really? When I went to him and I'm like, hey, I actually don't want to finish school. I kind of don't like school. I never did, but I want to pursue this. This is an amazing product, and I'll be naive, but like, I feel like I can disrupt this industry. And my dad's obviously looking at me like, dude, you have no idea what this industry is about. Neither do I. Yeah, we own a few gas stations, but like that doesn't mean anything. And it's like, but look, he was super encouraging, and he knew school wasn't for me. I mean, I was like, I did not graduate top of my class. I was, frankly, I barely just like snoozed through high school. I was just not like focused. And college I was probably on the Van Wilder track. Honestly, I was gonna take a long time to finish. And when I told him like, this is what I want to do, and I think my dad was just like kind of like supportive of like, yeah, why don't you try that? Now, look, incredibly grateful and blessed to have a parent that was saying like, I'll figure out how to support you in any way I possibly can, and pursued it. And thank God it's been working out so far.
I think one of the things that happens as a compounding entrepreneurial family, and I'm just going to say it, I don't have anything, this is just my thought, just based on what I've seen and people I've coached. But I'm going to say it for me as well, when we have entrepreneurial parents that are working for a living, that are generating money, what happens to us as a kid when we have a natural inclination in the direction we're going to go, we eliminate the noise of everything else. I don't know why. It becomes a skill that everyone wants later on in life. It becomes a skill everyone tries to take out of us in school when we do really well in some classes, but really poor in other, and people can't figure out what's going on. But what's really happening is there's an elimination of noise. Our brain is focusing on what matters the most, because that is what we're seeing in our environment. That's what our parents did. I grew up on a farm, guys. Like anything that wasn't life or death for the animals cows or the horses or the farm or whatever, didn't really matter. Soccer practice happened, games happened, but let me tell you, there was a lot of times where my parents weren't there or things needed to happen. My parents made every game they could, don't get me wrong, but that was the priority. So you eliminate anything that doesn't matter. I don't watch much TV. I like movies a lot just because I never saw them growing up. And for the most part, I don't really watch TV now or watch movies because we never had time for it growing up. I was sports, school, traveling for soccer, and then helping on the farm and then starting my own businesses at a young age, so I think that's what happens. Honestly, I think it happens to a lot of people. We look at the next generation. Oh, they'll never be their parents or work as hard. Well, I think part of it is we understand we don't necessarily have to because we gained your 40 years of knowledge in our 20 years of observing you.
Yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eugene. Comment on that because I think it's important because I too struggled in school when the education was varietal. I'll call it that way.
Yeah, look, I think the reality is that like there is a level of work ethic that you develop from your parents and seeing struggle and trying to make a buck. But at the same time, to your point, we look at that and go, okay, I mean, I'll just give you a very contextual but relevant example of my business. We sell to retailers all throughout the country. And I know how a small mom and pop operator thinks because my parents were that small mom and pop operator. So we have a sales team now that goes out and sells to distributors and retailers and wholesalers, et cetera. And one thing we always talk about is price pack architecture, right? Like at the end of the day, how does that product show up on the shelf to the consumer? But then all the in-between layers between a distributor and what do you charge a retailer, et cetera. And there's a system for that. And it's always the funniest thing because our sales team will go like, well, so-and-so operator, you being also, by the way, Justin, in the food service industry can probably appreciate this. Like so-and-so operator said they could just buy it a little bit cheaper, just picking it up at the Costco business center. And how do I compete with that with my distributors? And I would always laugh and I'd be like, what you tell that operator? Like, is saving that like 5 cents a unit actually that advantageous for them because they're putting in the labor? Because like that was what I would always joke with my dad about. It's like, guys, you guys are always going to the cash and carry to the wholesaler and like pick up all this product because you think you're getting it cheaper from the distributor. But like perhaps maybe we could have just negotiated or pushed the distributor a little bit more or figure out more clever ways to not have to break our physical backs to go get the best pricing. It's so interesting to me because when I hear that now I go, yeah, like now much has changed. Like my dad did the same thing. My dad would always go every Saturday morning. It was like, we're waking up early to go to cash and carry to pick up all the products or go to Costco when they used to sell cigarettes because like it was cheaper to buy there instead of buying it from a distributor. And I used to hate it because it was so much work as a kid. But you understand and appreciate that. And you try to figure out a ways to think about that in your business moving forward. But yeah, I completely agree. Like we try to work smarter and try to learn the lessons of your parents as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I agree with that. The running around, burning time for the sake of a cent. I think there's a lot of that mentality. Let's talk about this, Eugene. I'm going to anchor it, but first I want to anchor it on this. You took on beef jerky. You took on established, we're talking food code. We're talking pretty interesting food code related to beef jerky because you have a lot of different chemistry going on during the beef jerky process. So you take this on, you dive into this. At first, you're doing co-packing also probably to help fund your business in order to make sure that you can fund your own brand. Let's talk about those 3 years, the lessons, the hardship, learning food code, everything that sort of you had to take on, because I think those are all the things that stacked the foundation of what your business is now. You took the time during those 3 years in building a brand, or maybe it wasn't 3 years and maybe I misunderstood, but whatever that time was, let's talk about it.
Yeah, the time was interesting, right? Because first time being a business owner, period. And so the first 2 years was really spent understanding from this gentleman who owned the business, Charlie, like how it all works. How does the USDA work? How does How do you think about your production planning? How do you think about your business model? Who are your top customers? Why do you charge them the price that you do? There was a lot of learning as well as also just like soaking it all in, plus just asking industry folks of like, what do you see that, construction wasn't doing right, et cetera. Like there was a guy, for example, who was selling equipment, processing equipment for forever and trying to solicit business from Charlie for forever. And I remember the first time we bought the business and my lead production gentleman, again, they had these big Urkel deli slicers and he was just slicing the top rounds on it into big slabs of sliced meat and soaking them. And I was like, but dude, if I do more than, 1,000 pounds a day or 500 pounds a day, like, how are we going to scale this thing by just hand slicing it? There's got to be a faster way. And I remember my lead production guy who's been there forever was just like, no, I can just give me a few more slices and I'll hire more few people and we can do it. Don't worry. And I'm like thinking, there's no way we can't scale it that way. So I remember reaching out to a bunch of equipment processing guys and one guy answered the call. I was like, dude, I'll be right there. And he showed me this state of the art slicer from Italy. And it's called the Griselli. And he was like, he put this in this chamber and they'll come out and it's all sliced and you don't have to worry about it. I was like, how much? It's like $60,000. And I'm thinking, holy cow, I'm doing 60,000 a month in sales, not even profit, right? So I'm thinking, like, how can I afford this? But I remember to myself, like, talking to the gentleman was like, dude, I'm so glad you bought this business because I've been asking the owner now forever to buy this. And he just kept saying, no. And I'm like, look, I don't think the previous owner was saying no to it. I just think that he don't think he needed it. That wasn't, but I have all this ambition to double the sales and I think we're going to need this. And so, it's funny. We kind of bet on the come. We bought the slicer. My partner and I got a term loan for it, an equipment financing loan for it, bought it. And I remember I brought it in. My production lead guy was like, didn't even use it. I remember the first day I walked in thinking like, he's going to be using it. I walked in, he wasn't even using it. I'm like,
dude,
Raul, why aren't you using this? And he's like,
I'm going to give you,
I don't need it.
If I could tell you how often that happened in my business across the world, where you buy this brand new state of the art piece of equipment and then you walk in the facility, it's got a bag over and it's over in the side of the room and your labor's still laboring away, not saving the labor. It blows me away, and that a manager or general manager allows it to happen. But I do know this. It would blow my mind. Or we'd have brand new vegetable slicers in processors in the building, yet people would still want to hand slice the vegetables.
It's the most. That was when I first realized. Like, I remember joking with my dad. My dad laughed, and he was like, "Well, welcome to work in a small business. Now you know how it's going to be." And it's no different than, to your point, like a restaurant or a small mom and pop.
And it doesn't matter how big or small you are. I know even if you get bigger and you have more facilities, it just means more places for them to hide the new pieces of equipment.
No, that's right. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, why aren't you using it? He just kept insisting it, and he was being stubborn. He was like, I'm good. I don't need it. I can do it. And at that moment, I was like, okay, it's either he's incredibly scared that he's going to be out of a job, or he's just so stuck in his ways he won't use this. And so I remember to myself, like, okay, how am I going to get him to use this? I actually kind of lied. I told him, well, dude, the reason I bought this machine is I got an order in that's going to literally double our production. And like, I need, like, how are you going to produce that? And he kind of looked at me and was like, you're going to double it? I'm like, yeah. And keep in mind, going from 1,000 pounds to 2,000 pounds, it wasn't groundbreaking, but he was like, for him, he was like, spirit, okay. And I'm like, by the way, and I'm not going to buy more deli slicers. Sure enough, the following week, he's on that machine, he's using it. So it was like an interesting like lesson for me of like, okay, the human behavior. And I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit of like understanding the folks that work for you and what drives them, what motivates them. How are you going to motivate them to kind of do what's right for the business long term?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think the benefit, or from a labor standpoint, if the machine comes in, it helps exponentially grow the business. There's plenty of labor to still go around with that exponential growth. And you're creating other bottlenecks. Every time we bring in new piece of equipment, you create a new bottleneck in your operation that you're going to need labor to temporarily fix until you find a piece of equipment. That's the name of the business.
100%.
And even in AI and robotics, we're going to run into that. We're going to have to solve problems unless your business initially starts off that way, which is possible, I guess. In food, I just don't know that, the chef's going to leave the building just yet. So let's talk about the leap. When did you think it was time to launch your own brand? How did you come to that leap? Because it's a leap of faith. You're talking about packaging on your own. You're talking about labeling on your own insurance, your own relationship with retailers, so on and so forth. Let's talk about that. It makes sense to me because I would have done the same thing. So to me, it makes sense. Learn the business, learn everything, produce for others, and then when you're ready, launch something that is the best product possible.
Yeah,
but let's go about how you came there, because you guys are fairly young at this point, right?
100%. And as a matter of fact, we actually had a few notable brands reach out to us and said, "Hey, we're between a rock and a hard spot, and we're not self-manufactured. We know you guys are a well-known regional small co-packer that could produce product for, private label. What do you think about producing for us?" And so we were at a crossroads, my partner and I, because, 3 years in, doing 60,000, maybe ish 70,000 a month in sales. And it's a great, great small little business, but not where I want it to be, clearly from where I want to grow. And we've been approached by a few big brands, not big brands, but good sized brands that were like, "Hey, look, can you produce for us?" And we're thinking, listen, that could change our fortune overnight. I mean, we could be doing 300,000-400,000 a month in sales, and that's a drastic step up. But I remember my partner and I talked about it at length, and we said, well, the whole reason why we got into this business and why we bought this gentleman out was because we tried the product and fell in love with it, and we thought, well, this is so much better than a lot of the stuff we see out in the market. Like, we should launch this product. And so what a shame it would be if we just were focused on just private labeling this and not pursuing our own path. And so, look, I think everyone has ambitions to launch our own brand. And so it just made sense for us to do it. But I will tell you, there was that fork in the road moment for us where we were truly presented an opportunity to just private label it. And I remember going to my dad at the time saying, like, listen, like, to do this thing, do 300,000-400,000 a month. And my dad was like, listen, a 4 to 5 million annual sales business is nothing to be shy about. Like, that's great business. You can live a good life. Why not do that? And it's like, we just, my partner was just like, no, we want to be the artisanal gourmet brand of meat snacks. Like, why couldn't we do it? And so we actually declined that opportunity and said, "Hey guys, we actually think we're going to compete with you one day." And they kind of actually laughed. They're like, "Yeah, okay, sure, buddy, whatever." And I said, so it'd be kind of weird for me to produce for you if I'm only going to eventually go into the business for myself for our brand. And so we declined politely, and that's kind of rest is history.
Yeah, let's anchor something here. I'm going to go back to this, but I'm going to anchor something first. How many employees when you bought the business?
We were up to like 8.
8. How many employees now?
We have over 200.
There you go. So I'm going to just layer this for everyone, or all the non-entrepreneurs in the building, or whatever in the building on the podcast, but you get what I'm saying. The thing that happens here, what we just heard about, that's 192 new jobs. Okay, I just want everyone to hear that. That's number one. Number two, that's 192 families. Number three, that's 192 more individuals paying tax dollars going into our communities. Okay, so when we sell ourselves short 3-5 million, we sell ourselves short on what we can do for humanity and our communities and our country and our world and possibly the universe if we actually discover something that might be used to get us off this planet and go help inhabit and grow life on other planets. Okay? The most important individuals in that are probably going to be the people that understand solar and the technology, but the other people are going to be the people that understand food, how to package it, how to preserve it, how to understand the chemistry, because it's got to go into space. Okay, it's always why I've had interest in the snack food brand, particularly in this area. Okay, so if I really compound it and I get a little extreme, okay, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking way outside the box, but you guys can see where I'm going with this. The compounding of the human we never know. A PayPal guy, one of 12 guys, is now Tesla. You know, one of each of those 12 guys that started PayPal have done something great in the space of developing technology. It's the same in food, guys. There's stepping stones, there's development. So I just want to emphasize that's 192 new jobs. Okay, if I make another point, how many sub jobs is that for the vendors? How many jobs for the farmers? How many more cows is it that are being grown for it, helping the farmers, families, transportation, boxing, where the boxes come from, where the plastic comes from for the bags, so on and so forth. That's a lot of jobs created indirectly, just to emphasize this for everyone. So when we think about we're going to stop short, I don't think that's the plan ever for anyone under any circumstance, because otherwise we're shorting ourselves. Yeah, but more so we're shorting society and humanity and the animals in the world around us, you know? So let's talk about what product do you launch first? How do you decide? Do you launch one flavor? Do you launch multiple flavors first? How do you guys decide what to lead with? Because you obviously at this point know thousands of recipes of beef jerky.
Yeah, I mean, innovation is interesting for us. So when we think about flavor development, we really start where the consumer is. You know, there was a time and point where I think innovation was a little bit more kind of sit in a room and think about what flavors are unique and interesting, et cetera. But I think one of the things that we're trying to be super cognizant of is, now that we've scaled the business, making sure that production runs are as efficient as possible. And so, you know, we try to balance that line between being on trend, but also having scale. And so, you know, case in point, you know, we launched Sriracha in 2014, sorry. And we were the official license for Hoi Fong Sriracha. So the green bottle with the rooster bottle, the green cap rooster bottle, Sriracha sauce, like we were the official license partner for that. And Sriracha was having a moment at the time, but it was also kind of unique and hip and cool and trendy, but scalable at the same time. And so we try to find interesting flavors that are truly scalable. And what we learn is that consumers want things that they're just familiar with. They'll try unique, but unique doesn't necessarily get you to stay on the shelf as long as you want. So, you know, one of our flavors that we are super proud about is our mango habanero beef jerky. You could find it in most retailers in the in the States. That's like this fine balance between savory and sweet and spicy. It does incredibly well. And we also think that the flavors are different for each segment. So like our jerky line is going to tend to be a bit more sweeter, more savory and salty at the same time. Whereas our stick line is more on the, hey, it's spice, it's more dry rub, no sugar. It's more practical for the consumer. So not sure that entirely answers your question, Justin, but like flavor innovation for us is like kind of like scale, but also trying to be trendy at the same time.
No, I like this a lot. One of the things I like about it, and I've always felt this way as a manufacturer, and we sort of looked as time grew on, I think if we would have stayed in business, it was the same natural progression of getting into the production of our own brands, just because we had the knowledge and where the growth is. And I understand why you guys made the step 100%. And I think that from the choices you made and the products you launched with, being able to balance out the manufacturing as well as what the consumer wants is a unique gift in the world of co-packing. It's unusual. Most people co-pack. Most people don't want the headache of the consumer or the client or the box store or whatever, however we want to call it, the in-between people as well, distributors, so on and so forth. And so they choose one side or the other. They don't take on both, which is why I think this is unique and why I like it. So many options to grow from. You get into more than just beef, right, eventually. So I know you're in the turkey mini sticks. We talked about the mini stick business and expanding the business there. We've talked about the jerky itself. Let's talk about the difference of R&D from back when you launched the brand we were just talking about and you guys are sort of figuring it out, to what does it look like now as a a 300, $400 million company?
Yeah, I mean, R&D in some ways when we started to now is similar, but at the same time they're different. And I'll talk about the similarities. The similarities, look, I call it just tribal knowledge, but I've been in the space for so long that like just understand the intricacies of like the meat and the flavor and kind of what we use as like our marinade to produce the product. So in that sense, like, if we're just developing a new flavor as we speak and it's going to be awesome. But, I remember we're using some of the base stuff that I learned back in 2011 in the archives as a starting point of like, hey, this is kind of how I think about this particular flavor. Now, that being said, the difference today versus back then is we've got a team, right? We've got an R&D product manager. We've got, a commercialization team. We've got a supply chain team. We got all these folks that think about all the little things that I'm probably not thinking about as an entrepreneur, right? It's like, for me, it's like I'm working with one of the largest retailers in the country who says, hey, can you try creating this flavor? And it's like, well, hell yeah, I can. Why not? I'm the founder and CEO, and I love ideating on these things. So in that sense, that's a similarity of like, I'm ideating on a sriracha flavor in 2014 because I think that's the one to go with. And we're doing something similar to that. But at the same time, now we've got a team to back me up to think about, hey, yes, I hear you, but like, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? No, I haven't. That's what you have a team for. And I think that's the difference. And it just makes us a little more sophisticated, a little more sharper. But I'd say the real spirit of how we ideate and incubate flavors is still very much the same.
It's amazing. I love what you guys are doing. Talk to me about finding your you talked about launching your own product. Did you have relationships based on what you were doing before that you could leverage once you got your own product? Or you're just like, okay, I'm going to just track down King Soopers or Kroger. Sorry, I think of them as King Soopers. And I can't remember the other one or Sprouts, because that's a
Sprouts,
big one.
yeah.
Yeah, it's growing. We shop there all the time, actually. And so talk to me about, I mean, those are two big ones for me. So, and a lot of people don't even make it that far. So, well, I also think that having your own manufacturing allows you a scalability that other people don't have the access to. You don't have to produce a pallet for yourself. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little
Yeah.
bit
No,
about
it's a good.
this.
Yeah, so I had no idea how it even works to get into a big box retailer. As a matter of fact, first 3 years in, learn the ropes of USDA, learn the understanding of like how we make this product. How do we prepare ourselves if we do get that big order one day? And we finally launched the brand, right? And hired a designer, created our packaging, created the brand Country Archer, got it out there. The first thing I'm doing is like, okay, how do I get into a big box retailer? Well, like I literally Googled because like I would talk to people in the industry and they're like, hey, you got to get a food broker, a broker that has a relationship with these retailers. And I'm like, okay. I literally Googled food broker in Southern California. And the first website that showed up was this gentleman in Orange County who had a brokerage firm that represents food brands. I literally hit him up and I was like, hey, just cold emailing you. It sounds like you showed up on my Google list. Like, are you a food broker? And he was like, yeah, I actually food brokered a lot of like snack brands. I actually did the Pop Chips brand, et cetera. I'm happy to be your food broker, and sent him the product. He liked it, charged me a very, very heavy retainer that I just paid. And that actually got me the introduction to a lot of retailers to go have a meeting. Now, those meetings were a disaster. Like they all kind of looked at it and said, oh, this is a great product, but I'm okay. And some that did want it, they wanted like a $30,000 slotting fee per SKU. And, those that don't really know, like slotting fee is what you pay to grocery retailers to get into the store. And I was like, there's no way I can afford this. So I remember thinking to myself, like, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And so in the meantime, to kind of get the brand out there, quote unquote, again, my family owns a few gas stations. So I actually said, hey, outside of the really big distributors and wholesalers, like who are some small little jobbers that I can like contact to like carry our product? And my parents, gave me a few names. Like they like sell sunglasses, like these like small independent guys that drive up to every gas station. Like you see a rack of sunglasses, like that's what we put in. And so I asked one of them, I was like, hey, can you carry my product? And you sell sunglasses to my parents' gas station. They're like, sure. Very small, but that was kind of getting the brand out there in a few little bodegas here and there. Again, it kept getting rejected by the big box retailers. It was actually that one of the meetings I had was with Cost Plus World Market in Oakland. I'll never forget it. I went up there, met with the buyer, presented our brand, and she was kind of like, yeah, look, I just don't want another teriyaki original. I already have that. I have the big conventional brands that have teriyaki original. Like, why don't I want a teriyaki original? And I'm like, well, shoot, this is grass fed. It's cleaner. And they're like, yeah, but it's the same flavor. Again, this is 2014. They weren't thinking about, how differentially positioned it was, right? So actually, Sriracha was having a shortage that year. So like their big factory here in Baldwin Park was, on the local news because the roasting of the chilies was kind of fumigating in the air, and like the residents were complaining about it. Like they shut down the factory for like, I don't even know how long it was, but then there was a sriracha shortage and it was like a big commotion. So I thought that's really interesting. So like I reached out to the folks at Sriracha and I was like, hey, listen, like up and coming Asian food entrepreneurial, would love to see if I could partner with you on the licensing side. They said, sure. We got to an agreement. They were able to give me the Sriracha bottle rights on the packaging, and I was able to be the first officially licensed Sriracha beef jerky. So I went back to the same retailers that basically kept rejecting us and said, I have something unique and different. I have the official license to Sriracha. And a lot of them were like, whoa, that is really interesting and cool. I'll bring that in. And that was actually my Trojan horse, actually. And I said, okay, but by the way, like, you can't just bring in Sriracha. I need you to bring in original teriyaki because I can't just have one item on the shelf. And so they agreed. And that's kind of how we got our big break.
One of the things I think you guys did well at Country Archer, and I'm going to say this on the packaging, and I'm going to talk about this, is one, if it's beef, it's black, it's turkey, it's white, and then there's a coloring for each flavor. Okay, it's not, and it's very well done. You know what flavors are, and there's pictures of the food, and you can see through the bag now. Okay, you know what's inside. The product markets itself. It has the right coloring. It doesn't have too many colors, but it has the color. It has the pictures of the items that are in it. It is a very attractive marketing and advertising package. In my opinion, it markets off the shelf. I always notice it 100%. And even and to the point where we've probably eaten it so much in our family that we just call it Archer. We have a nickname. So, I mean, obviously I was excited to have on it, and I know beef jerky and the Sriracha is a licensing thing, and that's for anyone out there. If you can't always figure it out on your own, don't be afraid to collaborate. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. And I just actually wrote this we were talking about this, Eugene and I'm coaching soccer. One of the things I just talked about is Cristiano Ronaldo became one of the greatest soccer players, if not the greatest soccer player ever, because he would spend endless hours on YouTube and the internet at a very young age, mastering the moves of others. So what he did is when he showed up, by the time he was very young, he already had a suitcase of what was available. He didn't have much money. He was poor, but he had access to see how other players played. And he just compounded that. So that's sort of what we're talking about here. Knowledge compounded. I think we have a lot of access to things, but I think marketing and advertising ourselves and using the resources that we have to the best of our ability is great. I just find it shocking when we don't think about, we're so excited to get on the shelf, and then we put a package on there and it's a brown box with printed orange on it that no one can read. You work so hard to get into the supermarket. You have all these resources out there, no different than Cristiano Ronaldo. There's all these greats out there that have done it, but then instead of learning from them and helping yourself, you want to do it different, and it's a brown box with orange. I'm not picking on anyone, but there's lots of them out there. So you can go and see the brown box with the orange lettering on it all over the place. It's something people do. So I think what you guys did, talk to me about learning the packaging, understanding the retail space. Having Sriracha on the bag as a marketing point obviously was a big deal. So I kind of want to circle around. I don't know if I connected all the points for everyone or even myself actually, but I want to move on. So let's talk about the packaging, the labeling, getting the information, marketing grass-fed beef jerky in the first place, because that's wholly a new space when you guys came in 2014. The idea of grass-fed, grass-finished on a public scale was just coming about, right? So
Yeah. Well, I mean, the the thing that I wanted to make sure the whole reason why we started the business and why we founded it was the product was so clean. This is 2010 when we discovered on that road trip. Like, it was so clean and ahead of its time that I actually thought the fact that it had no preservatives, no artificial ingredients, no MSG, I just thought like, this is really good stuff. And then come to find out as we bought the business and started taking it over the first 3 years, it was clear to me that the beef that we used was grass fed, because in order to get really lean cuts of beef, you wanted to buy cattle that was raised on grass. It was just better for you. Like, you actually didn't want to buy, it was actually very interesting. You didn't want to buy the beef that was used for like, steaks and stuff like that, because there was like all the time grain fed and there was a lot more marbling in between. And I was kind of like, okay, that's not good for jerky. So, and in fact, we actually said, okay, so it's always been grass fed. We should put that on the label. And I remember doing that. It felt like sort of nichey at the time, but man, like, kind of in hindsight, fast forward, 11 years later, it's just become a norm. If you think about when you're kind of eating protein, you're thinking about the animal welfare aspect of it, and it's been really cool to see. But I will say, it felt like for 3 to 4 years, like I was kind of screaming in the void a little bit, kind of angry man yelling into the clouds a little bit about grass fed and why it's better for you and things like that. So
this is really cool, and I got a little off track there. Let's talk about distribution. Let's talk about, okay, I have to produce XYZ launch into the big box stores at the beginning. How did you take that on? What was the scalability? Was it just one product then, just the sriracha product? How did that work for you? What was that like?
yeah, so we got our first big break in 2014 with Sprouts and Kroger. I remember the first POs were pretty big. I think they were way more than what we had ever produced. And so we, it was not just sriracha, it was like three other flavors. So we had like 4 items going in, most of these retailers that we were starting to break through. And yeah, the production was definitely a challenge for us, because we had bought a few more machinery, but like, again, it nowhere close to what we were doing. And I think scaling up was probably the most challenging time at that period of time, because if you're not just buying machinery, but you're also just trying to get enough folks into the production to help kind of, produce this product. And listen, like, there is something to be said about skilled labor. Like, labor isn't just something you can take off the streets and add warm bodies to it. There is a skill when it comes to processing, even if it is laborious. And we had to kiss a lot of frogs to kind of get where we wanted to be in terms of, finding the right folks in the production site. But we were able to kind of pull through. But it's definitely a challenge, because you don't see it coming and you can't necessarily build it and then it will come either. So when you get the order, you're thinking, oh crap, I got 2-3 weeks to fulfill this order, and you don't have inventory, because you're obviously not going to be crazy to build inventory for something you don't know for sure that's coming in. So I'd say fast forward to now, we're much smarter about forecasting and getting a view from our partners on that. But man, in the beginning, you're just kind of blinding the blind a little bit.
I love it. For you, in your life.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I don't mean it like in a bad way. I think that you've done an amazing job. You guys have done such an incredible build here and what you guys have done. And for you, who in your life, it'd be your parents, but as you've ridden this journey and tried to learn this business, what have been some of your major influences, maybe mentors, people that have helped you along figure out this? Because it's been, 14 years now you've owned this business, going on 15. You've built a brand that I would say probably most Americans would recognize if it were put in front of them. And particularly because I don't know that I've passed a grocery store shelf that I don't see it on as I'm walking out, at least recently. And I shop everywhere because I love food, obviously. So let's talk about the influences, people that have helped you the most, guide you, maybe even the entrepreneur that passed on the business to you. Let's talk about the sort of the diamonds that were given to you along the way, maybe that you didn't have to learn on your own, that they gave to you. That makes
Yeah, for
sense.
sure. I mean, it does make sense. It makes a ton of sense. I mean, look, there's a lot that there's a lot of people I have to be thankful for along the journey. My dad in particular, he was the first entrepreneur I've ever met in my life. And he's someone I continue to confide in all the time about the business and different scale now. So my dad doesn't necessarily do a lot of coaching for me today, but definitely just a good person to kind of listen to and just kind of hear my concerns, anxiety, etc. And I'd say just kind of over the years, like I remember one of our first customers that we attained it was actually a local brand that was pretty sizable. They did like a lot of trail mixes and snacks. They were actually looking to private label their own jerky. That was actually one that I entertained, and they have a large roasting facility here in Pico Rivera where they do all their nuts, et cetera. And jerky was like a small little thing that they wanted to do to add onto their distribution trucks. And I met the owner, and he kind of showed me his facility. And I remember getting in a golf cart because you needed a golf cart to drive around this whole facility. And I thought, man, when am I going to do that one day? And he was a mentor for mine as well. His name was Hadi Morshed. He was owned one of the largest roasting plants here in SoCal. So that was a gentleman that taught me a lot and kind of gave me some advice. And look, I'd say along the way there was a lot of older entrepreneurs that I learned from that had scaled their businesses, and whether they were a lawyer or a food service broker or whatever, like any service provider, like I would just learn. And I would say that the best advice or the best way to approach it is just be a sponge, be a student in the game, and be humble, and just like don't act like you know anything. And it's amazing how much people want to help and teach you and give you advice. You don't necessarily have to listen to everything, but or do or act upon it, but just listening, I think, is such a huge. It's so important as just listening.
Yeah. I've never said this before, actually. And it's interesting because I think on the level that you're just dictated on, and it's interesting. It's this: our life is a compounding of information. I'm going to emphasize that for everyone. And when I was a young kid, my biggest advantage is my mom ran a business on the farm, like an actual business. It wasn't just a farm or a homestead or whatever. She ran a business. And so I did that. Then when I was 12, I went to private school, all boys school, Catholic school called The Heights. I'll give it a shout out in Potomac, Maryland. And because I went there, I'd have to spend after school at my dad's office where he was the CFO, then the COO, and then the CEO of a company before he became an entrepreneur himself of a $2 billion company that did food for airlines, just so everyone's aware of the scalability there. But I was told to shut up and just listen, and we could talk about it later. If I didn't like it, we could talk about it later. The food, the people, the international people. We're talking about airline kitchens, even behind Soviet Russia was some of the things he worked on, building them. Australia, kitchens there. So Qantas, one of his airlines that he did food for, just to give an example, United, Pan Am before they went under, Eastern Airlines before they went under in the 90s. But we gain information even as children when we listen, okay? There's a saying that children should be heard. Should be seen, not heard. And it's misunderstood as a disciplinary thing. If we really look at it, what it means is that if we're really in a growth mindset and we're really, as kids, gaining the capacity to grow, we're in a listening stage. We're absorbing, as Eugene just said. Okay. So throughout our lives, we compound this. Okay. By the time I'm 18, I have a compounded understanding of business where that makes a bachelor's degree a little easy in business. Sorry. And however, it makes school very boring in some ways. And I don't like art history because I couldn't figure out what it had anything to do with what I was trying to do in business by that time as a 19, 20-year-old and being in business at 18. So, but what I did eventually learn, it took me 3 years to figure this out, 21 at that point. If I just got into class and I just listened, I could pass the class, number one. Number two, I just needed to just listen as much as possible and try to extract any granular information that might help my business or help what I wanted to do with my life or grab onto it. And that's so important, you guys, as entrepreneurs. There are little keys, little nuggets thrown at us, okay? So huge that someone took a little nugget from a roadside stand, followed the little nugget to the manufacturer, and now has a 300, 400, going 500, we don't even know, 100 million of dollars of business. Okay, he's just getting started. Does that make sense? Eugene and his partner are just getting started. They're just warming up, guys. And why is that important? Why am I saying that? Because once we have the capacity to learn and grow, the rest is endless. What we see is just the results of the ability to grow and listen and adjust and pivot and also conquer the fear of our parents. We've had to do that. If you're a second, third generation entrepreneur, most likely you're also conquering the fear of your parents along your journey. So, Eugene, this is going to be my last question for you. I really appreciate your time. I'd love to do a part 2 just because I don't even think we covered anything really, but we covered so much. Who you are, tell me about the difference in you from when you started this as that college kid to the person that's an entrepreneur, but you're an executive of, a 9-figure business. That's not small potatoes, as they used to say, to be, pun intended, in food. So talk to me about your growth as a human.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I'd say learned a lot. I've definitely have grown a lot in areas of just understanding the sophistication of the business and scaling with the team. I would say the one core principle that has not changed is the reliant on people and understanding how much people play a role in your business and how it shapes. My dad, since I was a kid, had always told you your people are your assets because without them, you can never grow your business. Whether it was someone stocking the fridge or the late night busboy or the cashier, like my dad treated everyone as if they were vital to the business. And seeing that going up just kind of played out and how we grow the business. So when you think of that as your core true principle North Star, as you scale your business to 9 figures, that doesn't change. But what's really interesting is you start to lean on and look to your people to kind of help think about the next level of decision making. And ultimately you have to make the decision, but you rely on your folks and you kind of lean on your folks to come up with the right thinking behind or the right rationale behind it. And you don't necessarily have to come in over the top of an ego and say, no, this is the right way. You do listen. And if you hire a head of marketing and said, hey, we need to rebrand to Archer instead of Country Archer, you listen. You don't go, no, that's crazy. What are you talking about? We've been Country Archer from the moment I started this business. There's no way I'm ever entertained that. And my head of marketing is like, no, look at the data. I'm telling you. And most people don't even think of us as Country Archer. They think of us as Archer. And you're thinking yourself like, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, dude, we have over a $300 million business and you want me to do a name change? Are you crazy? Like there's that inherent anxiety and fear you have. But he's like, no, it's going to be okay. Look at the survey. Look at what consumers say. Consumers actually don't call us Country Archer. They call us Archer. And if we're going to grow this thing to the next level, we need something that's a little bit shorter, sweeter, easier to remember, more distinctive recall. That's how you build the brand. And it was like, okay, look, you know what? I trust you. I think that makes a lot of sense to me and the data makes sense. Like, let's move forward. Like, let's do it. I back that decision and we're going to go with it. But it's that fear of letting go, but at the same time knowing like, look, at the end of the day, like the buck stops with you as the CEO and the founder and the business owner, but trusting your people and the folks that you hired to come help run the business with you side by side. I think that's the biggest development growth for me.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today? Anything about what's going on with the brand, with the company that you wanted to mention today that we didn't get to talk about?
Um, no, I mean, look, I think we're Archer Meat Snacks, archerjerky.com. We're the leader in premium, better for you, all natural meat snacks between jerky and meat sticks. You can find us in over 25,000 retailers nationwide: Costco, Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger. We just pride ourselves on really meeting the consumer where they are. And we believe the consumer is looking for portable protein snacks that are healthy and on the go and clean as possible. And so, having a family myself, how important that is. Justin, you talk about your stepdaughter being in soccer, and we just think that, families should be eating healthier and cleaner and with the right intentions. And just know that we've got a company here with really like-minded folks who are just working day in and day out to deliver that to the consumer. And we're good people, and we just try to keep operating that way.
Yeah, I love this. I think that when we do the right thing all the way through, how we do one thing is how we do everything, but that's true in our business too. If we care about where the product comes from, we care about the employees who are making it, the equipment that's producing it, the animals that we're getting it from, the farmers we're getting it from, the ingredients that are going into it, the packaging, the distributors, the end consumers, the big boxes. If as an entrepreneur, if at least in the consumer packaging space, I'll call it consumer CPG goods, or CPG space, consumer packaged goods. Wow, I'm mixing it all up in one. Sorry, guys. But what I am saying is that if you can authentically think about how to build something that benefits everyone and is efficient to produce, healthy, and everyone along the chain that needs to be in the chain benefits, that's a strong product. It should pass that test. And at the same time be something unique. Even if it's a collaboration, we talked about that. I think that's the one thing I will say for everyone. And the last thing I will also say for everyone is just don't be afraid to try. When you gain the knowledge and you have the confidence, not the ego, try. It's why I anchored the 3 years in the conversation. Make sure the employees, the individuals, everyone you have are the right individuals. Eugene talked about, kissing a lot of frogs. That should be true in all of your businesses as you're building them, especially as you expand them. It never ends. I don't know when it ends. It never ends. And even some of those frogs turned princes and princesses can get entitled in your businesses and aren't princes and princesses anymore. So I appreciate your time, Eugene. I think I grew a lot myself, a reminder of the bigger picture, certainly a reminder of sticking to your beliefs, sticking to your product, being honest and transparent along your journey, just like you guys did. I'm not going to produce your beef jerky. I'm in fact going to be a competitor of yours. And that's being honest, guys. That's okay. Right? So
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Gene. I hope you come back on. I'd love to ask you questions about lessons learned and dive into a deeper conversation here down the road. But everyone in the audience, support, share the episode. Obviously, go to archerjerky.com. Also, in your grocery store, Sprouts, King Soopers, wherever you get your beef jerky, you're probably going to find it. I even have seen it in along my drives across the United States. So, and I do see the turkey sticks now and the beef sticks. I have not tried them, but I'm a much more like I want the jerky, and that makes me feel more manly. But and truth be told, it's probably true actually from a marketing standpoint. But it does feel that way. I like it. I like the flavor. But if you're in the audience, you're listening, try it. Look at the journey. Look at Eugene's journey. Look at what we're talking about. Do some homework. Google it. Gemini it in your AI. It'll give you a story of it also. In the notes, there'll be a summary of this episode, guys. Again, if you like what you're hearing, share, comment, go buy the product, taste the product. I guarantee you're probably going to stay around for a while. I know we have. It's what we eat here. It's what goes in our refrigerator. It is always there when we have beef jerky in the house. So very exciting. We buy it by the bulk.
Yeah.
Because it does
Appreciate it,
not
man.
last very long. Eugene, one last time, where can they find you guys? Where can they find more about your product? And where can they find sort of all the products that you guys have available?
Yeah, you can find us on www.archerjerky.com. We're on Amazon if you want to buy it online, or if you want to go in your local Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger, obviously the Safeways, any big box grocery retail stores, we're pretty much in, and you can shop it there too.
Awesome. If you had advice for anyone as we get off, what would it be?
Advice, I guess the audience is really mainly entrepreneurs, I
Yeah,
suppose.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think, the biggest advice is, like I said about the people front. I mean, your people are your assets, and I think just leaning into that is going to be critical in scaling your business in a meaningful way. And I would anchor on that.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Eugene. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you, everyone in the audience. I love you guys, and we're out.
Yeah, thank you for your time as well.